Welcome to Gatecrashers, a podcast dedicated to kicking open the door to your next favorite thing. Our mission, our creed, and our code is this: to make all things more approachable and accessible to everyone. We want you to find a universe that you'll fall in love with. I am very excited today because I get to talk about something that I love dearly and haven't gotten to talk on our show yet, Fallout. Now, we're talking about something specifically, which is the Fallout tabletop RPG books, which I am actually going to be running my first game ever as a game master. Now, Modifius Entertainment was kind enough to let me take a look at their newest installment in their series with the book Winter of Adam. Now, I must have aced my GOAT exam because I am even luckier to be here with Jonathan Fry, lead designer on Winter of Adam, and Jackie Liu Young, designer, developer, and editor on Winter of Adam. I think I got everything in there, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for having us.
I'm very excited to have you here. I've spent a lot of time with these books recently, and I'm really enjoying it. Like it's something very much outside of my wheelhouse, but it's very different than a lot of other tabletops that I've gotten to experience. So I'm very excited to chat with both of you. Now, I'm not sure how familiar you are with my work, but I'm a hard-hitting journalist. I like to start every interview off with something very near and dear to many people's hearts, and it's a hard question for a lot of people to conjure up an answer for, so I hope you're both ready.
Ready?
Okay.
What's your favorite sandwich?
Oh, this is a very important question. Yes, it is an important question. Oh boy, I think I'll take. You want me to take it first, Don? I think I have my answer ready for this one because I literally have made this a thing for me. So for me, my ideal sandwich is a Vietnamese banh mi. I love it. It has everything you ever want in a sandwich because it has the meat. You have different kinds of. You can either have the charcuterie from the Vietnamese meats, or you can have like char siu or things like that. But it also has it has like pickled vegetables. It has the herbs, and if you get really fancy, you can have things like pate in it, and it has so much variety, and the range of taste goes from everywhere from savory to sweet to sour, and you get all that herbaceousness. It's my favorite sandwich. I make it at least like at least once a week. Just that's how much I eat it.
Love that.
And I'm a simple man. I could say a burger because I'm a burger guy. But going beyond that, I eat this probably way too often. Grilled PB&J with hot honey, spicy honey. Yeah, that reminds me of my college days. I used to do peanut butter and pickles with chili oil. That was like my thing for like a while. Yeah, it's just so good.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. So the hot honey
is great. That sounds great.
I never thought of that, but chili oil with that sounds really good too.
Mm-hmm.
Damn. All right. Well, we're starting this interview off hot. Now, before we get into the book itself, what are your favorite aspects of Fallout as a lore, as a creation?
I'll say one of the things that, I mean, it's so hard because there's so many cool things about Fallout, and Fallout kind of this beautiful, chaotic blender of ideas, especially over the course of decades and different developers working on the game and in the world. So it's hard to point to any one thing, but I do enjoy the idea that so much of history has been lost to time and obfuscated. And so there's no hard answers that we know of for so many questions about how the world actually became this way, who was involved in the machinations that brought it to this place, what exactly is everything, what's the end game for things like Vault Tech, and then the weird stuff, right? Zetans, Lovecraftian entities, conspiracy theories. and in a post-apocalyptic environment, how different groups would have different perspectives and mythologies on everything from, architecture to these conspiracy theories. I grew up with Mad Max, and it always sticks in my mind, in Beyond Thunderdome, that group of survivors who basically been waiting for their plane pilot to come back during the entire apocalypse, and they built an entire religion around their pilot's return. Even though their pilot's, certainly dead, he's not coming back. They have like a prophecy about it. And so when Fallout came out when I was a little older, when I got my hands on it when I was a little older, it has the same ideas, just weird mythologies created out of a lack of information.
Love that. Jackie, where did you?
I think for me, I remember when I first played Fallout 3, I think the thing I loved the most was how everyone finds a way to survive, how everyone survives in the post-apocalyptic world, and like how we get these different groups form, how there's like cultures that form out of it. Like Don just said, like the religions that form from missing information or warped and perverted ideas. And I love the idea of like this, where parts of the world are just kind of time capsuled, right? But yet they're still extended like years into the future. And you're just going, how does this work? We don't know. It's a blender. It's going to be great. And it's probably going to be, and it's like, yeah, let's also include some wonderful dark humor. And I think the dark humor is what always kept me, that's what's always kept me.
Yeah. I think same. Don, is Fallout 3 your entry point as well?
I played Fallout 2. Okay. So, and that was like, one of my first big, kind of computer RPG experiences when I was younger. But I think it was probably New Vegas is the one that really hooked me into Fallout, years later.
That's interesting. It's always interesting to hear where people got in, because most people I know are 3, and me personally spent far too much time on it to the point where I was in DC and I could tell where the different metros were. I was like, wow, this is didn't think this skill would be useful. Now, for listeners, your roles in this book, do you mind explaining like what parts you brought to it, like what you're doing with the book, how you design things like that? Just like a simple kind of overview of what your role is.
Sure. It's pretty complex, and it's a very collaborative process. There's a pretty big team of people who worked on this book, and really you could break it down into like the pre-production team, which are writers and designers, editing, and then the post-production or the production team, where you have more layers of editing, and project manager, and layout. I was the lead designer, and so it sort of started with I'd worked on a couple of the previous books that have come out for Fallout, and Samantha and James, who's a project manager of Fallout at the time, came to me and they wanted me to pitch them a full campaign book, an expansion. And they wanted it to be set in the Commonwealth. And for IP reasons, with Bethesda's timeline, it needed to be before Fallout 4 in the timeline. But that was really it. Like, pitch me anything. And so I came up with, a 5-page pitch packet or so. It kind of outlined the story and some of the rules and expansions we wanted to see. And then they sent it to Bethesda to make sure that they would approve the story and they liked everything. And as soon as that got approval, I was able to start putting together a team. We kind of broke down our initial writing team between people who are doing game design, like Jackie working on elements of the game design, people who were doing world design, so like new settlements and factions, which was Chelsea and Virginia on the team. And then narrative designers, people who are actually designing the quests and the story. And that was me working on that along with Jesse Heinig, who is one of the original Fallout developers for the video game, like way back in the day, and Chris Bissett. And so that was kind of our organization. So my job as the lead designer was beyond writing the chapters that I was writing, was working with everybody one-on-one, in group chats. People were tossing ideas around. I said it was a collaborative environment. It was really collaborative. So people were sharing ideas and building off of each other's ideas. And each element of the process informed the next. So we started with world design, and that informed what game mechanics were going to look like with the game development team. And those two things informed the quests, the actual, narrative design of the book. And we worked through that process.
Wow. That is a very large team, and a lot of really interesting names in there too.
Mm-hmm.
Jackie, what is the role of an editor on something like this?
So you can have different editors in different phases of production. You usually will have so Don, you did a lot of the creative direction. So usually there's already a little bit of like developmental editing worked on for like most of throughout all the different parts and pieces of the final book. But then you'll come in with people who are like copy editors and proofreaders who will then be coming in to like fine tune it, to like make it nice and pretty. Hopefully get through find some of the typos. It's, you might still miss a few because we're only human, but we try our best. And so that's the kind of roles that I would be coming in would be for those sort of things. And sometimes you also have a person who might be, which is what I do now, which is I'm managing as for the editors, and I'm also managing for all the other stuff. So like we have people who will direct and like figure out what it needs to be done and who we need to hire to get that done.
There's so many moving parts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in my research, I uncovered that Fallout has a pretty solid background with tabletop. Like it's pretty much born from it. And I was reading about Van Buren and like how so many of these characters were actually like Arcade Gannon from New Vegas was a player character at one point for someone. I was like, that's so interesting. Now, for you, what is unique about this Fallout tabletop? Like what sets it apart from other different tabletop games? Mechanics wise, or like whatever you think it really is special about it.
Well, it uses the 2D20 system, which is a system that Modiphius employs for a lot of its games, but in variation. So it's not always exactly the same. And I don't know, but you could say a lot of different things about how 2D20 is different than other tabletop games. Functionally, it's the same, but there's things that are different. I think the thing about 2D20 that I like the best, and I think is the most exciting, is it has this sort of meta currency. In Fallout, we call it action points. And when you roll particularly well, if you're making a skill check or if you're making an attack, if you roll particularly well, then your group, the entire player group, builds this pool of action points, which you can spend to do various things. You can use it to kind of change the direction of the narrative, to get bonuses on certain rolls. But the game master also has their own action point pool, and you can, basically let the game master gain action points so that you can get a bonus in a moment where you need it because you really need to succeed. You can get your bonus and sell some AP to the game master. And the game master can use that pool that they have to add extra enemies to an encounter for plot twists. They can use it in so many different ways. There's an action that you can take in Fallout called Rally, and not all characters are going to be as good at combat as other characters. There's going to be combat in a Fallout game, but in this system, you can really kind of play any kind of character. You can play a scientist, you can play a farmer, however you want to imagine your character. And so in combat situations, if you aren't attacking, you can use this rally action, and basically using any kind of skill that makes sense for the scenario, you can add AP to your group's pool, which then your allies can use on their rolls. And so it's a very cinematic system overall. And I think that's what makes 2D20 so special to me, is how cinematic it is.
Yeah, I have to agree. That's one of the things I love about the system is it's very cinematic. It's very supportive of the narrative. I also like that for a lot of like if it lets you fill in, especially the system lets you fill in all the kind of aspects of a tabletop game. You got your mix of combat, you got your mix of role playing. You also have exploration, which is of course is still a big part of Fallout. And that is a core identity also in the game mechanics of the game. There is ways for you to really interact with the environment. And I think the thing I love about it too is just the fact that you really can play as anybody, and it doesn't feel like you don't belong here. Like you actually do belong in this game. You also feel like you belong in the story and the setting, and it doesn't feel anything different.
I love that. Now, before we get into the actual Winter of Adam itself, as I'm starting a play of this to review the game, do you have any tips for any first-time GMs? Also, do you have any tips for first-time players? Like, are there any things you keep in mind when you're starting a new campaign?
There is a starter set for Fallout that I do recommend to folks, especially if you're coming at this as a fan of Fallout, but not really a lot of experience at running a tabletop game. The starter set includes the basic rules, and the basic rules are, the normal rules, but they're simplified. It doesn't include everything. It really includes what you need to know at the bare minimum to run a game. And it's written in such a way that I think if you're first timer, there's a whole, subchapter on like advice on how to run a game and how to imagine, how to have a conversation with your players. And I think that's one of the things that, I emphasized in that chapter and would emphasize to anyone getting started, is that the basic loop of a role-playing game is for the game master, the person running the game, to describe what the characters are experiencing around them, ask them questions if need be to prompt them to say what their characters do next, and then to respond. So the players speak, the game master responds, describing more of what happens or what they see or experience. And any time that there's a question about what should happen next, that's when the game mechanics come in. That's when the dice rolls happen to determine how things go. That's the basic loop. But the starter set also has an adventure. It's a little mini campaign, probably would last 3 to 5 sessions, depending on how long you play. And as the adventure goes on, it is introducing new rules. So the adventure actually teaches you how to play as you play through it, both the game master, and it introduces new rules for the players as the adventure goes on. So it's meant as a really easy way to kind of onboard into the system. And whether you play that game and then continue with those characters or that story, you just play it to get a feel for it before you dive into your own story and your own setting. I think it's a good way to start. But there's so much good advice out there. Reddit, social media. If you go to the internet and you ask them, how do I TTRPG? You'll see a lot of advice. Maybe not all of it's good, but if you look for, the right communities and advice that you can see many people say this is great advice, then that's where I would recommend starting. Don't guess yourself, but let the folks who have done the work trying to make the hobby more accessible sort of give you their best advice.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really cool. I don't see many games do that, so I'm really excited to check that out. Now, Winter of Adam. It is even the cover is striking, because winter isn't something you think of when you think Fallout, other than Anchorage. Winter. You're introducing a lot of different winter elements and gameplay elements. what was the most interesting for you to craft? Like, what are you most excited to hear player feedback on?
I think Don knows which one that is. It's my radioactive blizzard, or
Yep.
or Razlid, as I call it. It's literally
Yes.
it's literally a rad storm, but made into a blizzard.
And
It sounds
Jackie
horrifying.
Jackie worked on winter survival rules, winter environment rules. I think that was maybe like the first thing you were working on.
Yeah, it was that, and then I think after was the combat design, the encounter design appendix. So yeah.
This one, it does introduce some more ways to balance your combat.
Yeah.
What was important for you with that? Like, when you're approaching a combat encounter, what elements of that are important to you?
I think for me, it's more about what are the kind of characters are central to that scene. Like what's the scene about? Who's in it? And if you can answer those kinds of questions, usually you can fill in the blanks for that. And then one of the big things that like Don and I talked about when we were designing that section was providing a tool that people can use to actually come up with an encounter relatively quickly. And if they need to scale the encounter, then they can scale it, and then they can make it fit closer to the power level of the party, because it's applicable to any scenario. So that was the goal of that entire of my section, was to make sure that there was a very simple rule set that you can follow by to build an encounter quickly, and to then put in the kind of NPCs you want in it. And if you need to scale them, there's a tool for that as well. And
yeah, it's a very easy to understand as well.
Okay.
I have a lot of combat for me has always been like, oh, this is kind of boring when it should be cinematic. But the way you've been talking about this game is like, wow, I love how this is all set up. So hearing that, like, you're thinking about the characters in the combat more than you're thinking of like, oh, the back and forth, and then you make the other stuff easy, is very wonderful to hear.
I think anyone who's played Fallout, a Fallout video game, remembers the time when you go into an area you probably shouldn't have and get completely wrecked by something, and then run for sheer terror.
That's like 20%. It's like 20% of my playtime in Fallout. 80% I'm really cool, and 20% is just me running backwards, screaming.
When you find your first rad scorpion, and then you just go, "Oh, I'm clearly not supposed to be here. I surely should not be here."
Anytime you run into a death claw, it's like, oh shit, maybe I shouldn't have walked this way. A lot of the time is spent running away or jamming the jump button and seeing how high you can get to escape. With this book, the main kind of quote unquote antagonist is this prophet, the last son of Adam, who leads the children of Adam. What made you want to use them as like your driving force? Because through the games they're there, but they've never been a driving element. In 3, they're kind of like the weirdos who are worshiping this bomb.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at the very basic level, I would say because they're cool. But there is more to it than that. One of the things with writing a story, a campaign that people could play through that took place before Fallout 4, is that it presented some interesting creative challenges to approach. Like, anything we wrote needed to make sense for Fallout 4, not change anything about Fallout 4, its canon, its lore, to add to it. We wanted it, and we wanted it to feel like you're playing a real Fallout game, a full-fledged Fallout game where your choices have consequences and you meet all these different factions and there's a big, big story at play. And so I liked the idea of kind of approaching a faction that we've seen multiple times in Fallout. They're probably most emphasized maybe in Far Harbor, that expansion. But every time we see them, it's like these different sects, these different groups, and they all kind of have slightly different identities, each of these sects. And I'm really fascinated by the idea of how you could take an organized religion and change like one big idea about what they believe in, and that'll splinter an entire group. And then you have these other, parallel organizations that maybe don't get along. They don't see things differently ideologically, and how a single idea could take a group that might normally be a little more passive, and make them more militant or more dangerous. And so, I don't want to spoil, but there's like one big idea with the sect that's sort of the antagonist in this book that is so radically different than the other Children of Adam groups. And that singular idea is really what causes, or is at the heart of a lot of the problems that the Commonwealth faces. And the Children of Adam in Fallout 4 in the Commonwealth, I mean, you kind of run into them, like they're just kind of like random bad guys. There is the Crater of Adam group, but like most of them that you encounter are these random Children of Adam. And, there's no real answer to like, why are they out here? Why are they so aggressive? And so I thought that was an interesting idea. Like maybe we could explore why those NPCs are out in the wasteland. What happened?
That is so interesting because, like you're saying, like we don't know why they're so aggressive, but like as I've been watching and researching for this interview, I've watched way too many lore videos, and someone was talking about your game, and I was like, shit, like the people who love Fallout are going to play this, and it's going to be like, that's why they were this way. So it's really interesting to hear that's like something that was in mind. Now, it's come up a couple times. This is set before 4.
Mm-hmm.
Does all story elements get the stamp of approval from Bethesda?
Oh yeah, they have to approve everything. Yeah,
everything gets approved.
So I don't know if you're allowed to talk about this. Are you able to use other things? So not just 4. Could you use elements from 3 or New Vegas or other stuff? Or is that stuff you'll have to get approved?
Well, everything does have to get approved. I'll let Jackie take this.
Yeah. So usually, I won't. The best I can say is usually we can make references to certain. We can definitely use things from other sources in Fallout. But again, it still has to go through Bethesda's approval. So that's usually what we end up doing. Is just, hey, we have this idea, and it's either a yes or a no, or maybe change this. That's usually how it goes.
Interesting.
And I said this before, but it really kind of is a pitch process from, the writer to Modiphius, or Modiphius to Bethesda, always Modiphius to Bethesda. And so it's not that, it's not Bethesda necessarily saying, hey, go write this story. It's more, we want to do, because the writers working on Fallout are passionate about Fallout. They want to do justice by the setting that they love. And so they write, and those ideas usually in multiple stages. First, there's like an outline, and then there's the full manuscript, and they have to sign off on everything, which can, sometimes slow down. It takes time to get approval because they want to make sure that it fits with, both what's come before and whatever they might do next, I imagine. But yeah. So everything is approved, every little element.
That's really interesting. So personally, I'll take everything in this book as canon. That's very cool. Now, there is a new monster that was on the website, and I don't want to talk about it if you don't want to, but the Gigapede. Without spoiling anything.
Yeah, we can talk about the Gigapede.
Yeah, we can talk about the Gigapede.
What the hell? That thing. just tell me where did that start? Because like there hasn't been anything that big other than like the one creature in 76. Like this is a massive threat. What drove you to want to make a creature like so fucking scary? I don't know what else to say.
I don't think we specified exactly what this monster. We knew we wanted, when we were first working on it, we knew at this section that we wanted there to be a threatening monster that was being leveraged as a weapon by, this particular force. And when Jesse Heinig, who worked on the war section there, that chapter that has the Gigapede, I know Jesse because we're both also fans of Dark Sun, which is an old D&D setting.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Dark Sun is known for its giant monsters and its survival kind of atmosphere in a lot of ways. You know, it's fantasy, but there's some parallels between Dark Sun and Fallout. And Jesse was the one who pitched the idea for the Gigapede, like at its core. And he pitched it as being huge. Like, why not go bigger? I don't see.
Yep.
And it's only a good thing in my mind.
Yep. And I had the pleasure of studying that out.
Yep.
I'm so excited. It's such the image that has it for the chapter is so cool.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to get to explore that chapter.
Yeah.
The artist who worked on this book just knocked it out of the park. The art is so good.
Yeah. Our art director, Ariel, is phenomenal. And Ariel also had some of his own personal touches throughout the book as well. So it's really nice to see him have some in there as well.
Yeah, it rules. all the art for this book it's a long book, but like keeping reading, it's like, holy shit, like look at this stuff. Now, this campaign feels a lot closer to a sandbox than it does like a linear path. How do you go about designing something like that to keep people on track, but still allow them freedom to explore this world and make changes, which is also very important in the story?
In terms of narrative design, I think that was the hardest challenge. It's not easy, and because you're walking a line. There's various approaches you could take to sandbox design. A lot of people will design sandboxes, starting with like a hex map with individual points on the map that you might find, locations, and then you decide either through actually writing it out or through random tables what's in that location when the players get there. But this was, we kind of want to develop a sandbox that was narrative forward. And we mentioned in the book that a lot of people play Fallout, the tabletop game, in other settings, not necessarily the Commonwealth. They play it in their home city or a city that they love or a city they just think would be cool in the post-apocalypse. And so we wanted to write this in such a way that, yes, it is set in the Commonwealth, but we kind of provide you the tools for you to take it and put it into your campaign. And in doing so, we needed to create a system for the narrative to flow. You could go to any of these settlements in any order. You could engage with the side quests there that'll push the story forward. And so you have these side quests that are location specific. And then you have the main quests, which kind of unlock once players are at an appropriate level or the game master decides it's time to push the main story forward a little bit. And then it leaves you a lot of open space for game masters to insert their own side quests or their own side stories, either to fit their unique setting or because they have a fun idea or because the players do something and the game master says, yes, more of that. Let's explore that. And then it's connected with this sort of this travel system that we've created that is meant to keep things really light, as you're moving around from place to place, scavenging place to place, and let a few dice rolls kind of spin out random elements of the story. And Chris Bissett, who worked on a lot of those side quests for the settlements, also worked on the travel mechanics that are in the book. And Chris is a big fan of random tables and randomly generated story. And so I was so excited for Chris to work on that because that's something that he's really, really good at. He understands how to create a system that is sandbox. And so, yeah, especially that first chapter is a big old sandbox.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I'm very excited to get into this game. Now, before we get into, I want to talk a little bit about the settlements in general, but this book does add a couple of new player, what do you call them in your game? Player classes, like your backgrounds.
Origins, yeah.
Origins,
yeah.
Yeah.
Protectrons. are now playable. What has been your experience with player characters playing as the different robots? Like, what have you seen people use that for? Because it's so interesting to me because they have so much personality. Like, where do you see people take these?
Well, a lot of people love exploring ideas of, either transhumanism or robots who become self-aware. Like, it's a classic trope that players generally love exploring. Some people fall in love with the voices of Mr. Handies, and they love, they love playing that kind of cheesy character. Protectrons are kind of the same way. But I think like there's something that fascinates human beings about the idea of being a programmed individual, with a very set guideline of, I can do this, I can say this, I can't do this. And then seeing that break over time, that I think there's something essential about that power fantasy, because it does kind of mirror people's experiences of themselves. There's something very human about these robots, and getting to play through that, I think, could be empowering.
Love that. Now, the settlements are a huge part of this because you're trying to survive the winter and you're trying to build these communities to stop the atoms from spreading everywhere. Why was settlement such an important part of this for you?
Well, I think we wanted to provide, like I said, a sandbox for players and game masters running the system. And we wanted to create new settlements for two reasons. One, those settlements are a lot easier for you to just move into your own setting if you're not playing in the Commonwealth. I guess two, because it's cool and we were excited to do it. Chelsea Steverson is the one who worked on most of the new settlements, specifically the ones that haven't been seen before. Because there is Diamond City and Good Neighbor in there as well. But, when you're talking about like Mirage and Big Top, those are locations and factions that she worked on. But they can be hurt. I think that's probably the biggest answer is, canonically, we know that Diamond City doesn't get blown up before Fallout 4. It's there in Fallout 4. And so to increase the stakes of the story, we needed to create people and locations that players would come to care about that could be threatened more directly.
Damn, I didn't even think about the pain elements there. Now, you mentioned the one I really want to talk about before we talk about Big Top and those types of things. In the Good Neighbor section, I just want to know whose idea was the building a business. And I just need to know who put the blame on for that, because as soon as I read that, I was like, oh, fuck, this is going to be like 3 sessions worth of my players opening a hotel.
Right.
Yeah. Where did that idea? Because it's like just a small part of a page, but like, that's going to take up so much time because it's such a fun thing.
I think Chelsea came up with the idea, and it was, and Chris, who also worked on the side quests there in that particular settlement. That was a conversation, they were having. But because of course players are going to want to start a hotel or, a business, that always happens. So it doesn't take, like, we didn't want to make it overcomplicated. I know that. But we wanted to empower the game master to say, let them start their hotel. That'll be fun.
Now, Big Top. I love Fallout, but as soon as I got to this chapter, I'm a huge fan of clowns in horror settings.
Same.
When I read this, I was like, holy shit, they made it. This is for me. Where did that start? And like, what kind of feedback have you gotten about that? So like from people seeing this, what have you heard?
Oh, that was Chelsea too. And, Chelsea's a super creative person and, has worked in the theater industry and has a performance background. So I can't speak for where Chelsea got the idea from. But it came out of her big creative brain. And I think you can read, I don't want to spoil too much, but
yeah,
I think people will, a lot of people will probably empathize with that settlement in particular. And there's just so much room for fun there between like the circus performances, the over the top, characters that you'll find there, and also the real struggles that they're going through that you can get involved with.
Yeah.
Something that has come up a couple times in our conversation and in the book is that a lot of these elements and different mechanics in the game, like in the book itself, it says you don't need to use this. You can break it and put it into your own thing. Yep. What about, are there features that you see that you like love to see what people do with? Like I love the idea of not making people play by the exact rules. Is that something that inspires your team in general?
I think so. Yeah, because I know myself, I don't always use, like when I run my own games in my home games, I don't necessarily always use everything that's given to me. I use what I think I need, and then I might improvise the rest, or I might change something because I think this works better for my table. Because like that's usually what these kinds of books are like in general for TTRPGs, is you're really trying to build an experience and a story with your table. So that's usually what you want to do, is take what you need and adapt anything else that you would want to change.
There's there's a huge modding community for Fallout, right? And in tabletop, it's the same. Yeah. Like people any system, Dungeons and Dragons, Fallout, any system, people hack it to bits. They use the parts they like. They add on their own things because they enjoy that process, or because they want to see it play out a little bit differently. I don't think all games always kind of give the game master explicit permission to say, hey, use whatever rules you want and throw the rest out. But I think they should, because that's how a lot of people play anyways. And so if you think of a tabletop game as like the rules as a big toolbox, you pick which tools you want, toss in your own tools if you want, and that's your toolbox.
I love that. That was something that's every time I see it, I'm like, this is beautiful writing, because it's like, this is creative, do it yourself. Now, before I let you go, I just want to know what your favorite elements of this book are. Like, what is the thing you're most excited to get into people's hands without spoiling your own thing?
Ooh. Do you have one, Don?
It's hard to pick one. There's so many cool things. Like I legitimately have so much about this book.
I know.
Without spoil, so I won't spoil. But the book, as the threat and the campaign itself, the story itself ramps up, the book goes to a very maybe I'll say Lovecraftian inspired place, and it provides some tools that I think people could use in their own games if they want to delve into the unexplainable in Fallout. And I'm such a horror fan that I was very excited to write that portion of the book, and I'm very excited for people to experience it. During playtesting, I said, this is intense. This is really scary. I can't wait for people to experience it.
I loved reading that section many times. As Don, as you remember when we had our conversation, I was just like geeking out the entire time. And I think for me, there's so many places. I do love how the whole bit of like the where Jesse worked on like the whole like kind of war or kind of like conflicts that happened in there, the major, like one of those pivotal conflicts moments. Because honestly, I loved how it escalated and how much it changed, and really like allowed you to give you tools to like go like, hey, if this happens, or these are tools where we can give you for like, if things change in your story, we have ways for you to fill it in and make it work still. And honestly, I just love that whole entire section. That was one of my favorite sections to read and edit for as well.
And I love to, because I love that section. There's a lot in this book that's meant to be, there is a story, a strong narrative, but it's also providing you templates. So in the war section for this book, it really wouldn't be hard for you to take the template of how Jesse set up the war in these multiple stages and change that for your game if you're telling a different story. So it does provide you tools to run a war without it becoming super heavy and super slow. It keeps it really story focused. And there was an effort in this. You'll see it in every single quest to provide a list of possible outcomes. In Fallout, choice and consequence is so important. You help this person, therefore this person, is your enemy. Or, that's an oversimplification, but you see how your choices play out in the Fallout video game. And we wanted to provide tools throughout the book for game masters to really show the players how their characters are changing the world, and the world is reacting entirely to them.
Yeah, there's so many cool elements to this book, and I'm so excited for people to check it out. Now, one question for me personally: the cover, the Prophet, his armor is beautiful. Is that an item you'll be able to get?
Is that a spoiler?
Nah, I think we can.
Nah, yeah, we can tell them. Yeah. Yes, good. Probably, maybe.
Good. Maybe. Good.
Jackie,
I might have had it. I might have written it.
Well, thank you both for being here. When does the book hit shelves?
I believe it is I know it's in pre-orders right now. And if you pre-order the book for Modiphius right now, you do get the digital PDF immediately. And I believe the book is slated to come out sometime third quarter, I believe, is when we estimated that. I don't think they've given it a definitive date yet.
But you can get the PDF right now. And I'll say this too. Because I realized this when I was looking on the site, and I saw a couple people mention it. And Modiphius has like multiple stores, right? Like you can order it from, and just make sure if you're, in America, you order it from the American store, not the British store, because of the shipping costs. So you don't have to pay for international shipping.
Yeah. That's a killer.
Yeah.
It's very interesting that the books are PDF too. Like when you buy them, you get both. So it's very easy to have your table be ready to go.
Yeah, but absolutely.
Do you have other projects people should be on the lookout for? Anything they should pick up from either of you?
You want to go first, Jonathan? Because I'm sure you have a lot.
I am always working on things. There's nothing I can talk about in terms of games coming out right now that I'm allowed to talk about. But I've worked on a lot of games. So if you are interested in me, if you look up Donathan Fry online, I've got a website with links to some of my games. And I'm a full-time, like what I do most of the time is I'm a professional game master. So I run, a bunch of unique campaigns, custom campaigns for folks who just great players. And that's kind of my job. And then on top of that, I work on books as well when the right project comes along. So when somebody says, hey, do you want to write for Fallout? I'll say, yes.
Yeah.
Jackie, do you have any?
I don't think I also have a few things I cannot talk about. Also, unfortunately, some of it's also in Fallout. But I will say that I am actually one of the editors for Fallout, so you will see my name quite often in a lot of upcoming products. We recently started releasing individual one-off adventures on that are digital only on Modiphius's website, so you can also do those as well now. And those we have Orange Colored Sky and Fully Operational already out, and I can definitely say that we probably have more on the way, and we have other plans for Fallout, the tabletop game in the future as well.
Awesome, very excited to hear it. Well, you can find us at gatecrashers.fan and on all social media at gatecrasherspod. Thanks.